Fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing.
Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support I received from you. And as always, all the information in my videos is rumors taken from the internet or the street. I'm not saying the information is fact.
Pick your mans up.
Yeah, just because people used to come through shooting at us every day. And this block, words can't even explain, man. Can't even explain.
Yeah, man. Middle school Valley, 05 way on money. Young money, man. They in the building.
600 boy, LA, man. LA Capone, man. Get it to him, man. OC2 boys, man. Team
Number 9, man. Number 9 shooter, you hear me?
Hey, bitch, little bitch. Yeah. What the fuck is wrong with you? Hey, I am Brick Squad. Brick Squad, boy. What the fuck is you talking about, boy?
You have to be willing to die or go to jail for 100 years if that's the lane that you're stepping in. You have to understand that whether you 15, 16, you got to think like a man. You know what I'm saying?
So don't be in it. Oh, you're not? Why does everybody say you're only 16 years old?
They say what they want to say.
How old are you?
300.
Howard Mason, also known as Pappy Mason, is an American drug trafficker and organized crime figure. Mason, alongside his partner, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, ran a drug smuggling gang called the Bibos, in the Jamaica, Queens neighborhood of New York City. The gang sold drugs and netted as much as $200,000 per month in profit. One of the biggest gang leaders and drug traffickers in one of the most violent eras in New York. He was known as one of the most notorious and feared gang leaders in all of New York. When the South Jamaica crack wars were in full swing and bodies were dropping by the day, Pappy held court in the street and reigned king. He was the one nobody wanted to mess with. He started working for Fat Cat in the beginning and they became partners later on. Cat hired him on the spot for $1,000 a week as security. Pap's got a good heart, Fat Cat said. If he's your friend, he's your friend. But if he's your enemy, that's something altogether different. Pappy was the guy crazy people would think twice about trying. With his no-nonsense attitude, he was vicious. And don't get it twisted, Pappy was fiercely loyal to Fat Cat. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols was born on December 25, 1958, in Birmingham, Alabama. During the 1980s, Nichols became one of the top drug lords in New York City. He got his nickname because of his linebacker thick neck, a head so big it nearly blocked out his friends' faces in snapshots, and his rangy beard. Nichols spent his early years in Alabama, where he was raised by his maternal grandmother. Around the age of 10, he moved to Queens, New York, to live with his mother, Louisa, and her third husband. Dropping out of school before the 9th grade, Nichols started to run with a dangerous crowd. He became a member of the Seven Crowns Street Gang. In 1976, Nichols committed 2 robberies with another young man. He was convicted for both crimes and sentenced to 18 years in jail, but was released in 1980 after serving only 2.5 years. Around this time, Nichols moved on to the more lucrative crime of drug dealing. He was able to get into the business through a mafia connection. At the time, the mafia controlled most of the drug trade on the East Coast. Nichols established a network of dealers to work the streets and the housing projects of Southeast Queens and also sold drugs to other operations in the area as well. Many members of Nichols's crew were close family relatives, including his mother and 2 of his sisters. Brian Glaze Gibbs was another trusted associate, as was Joseph Mike Bones Rogers. Howard Pappy Mason was also a key part of Nichols's operation. Nichols's headquarters was Big Mac's Deli, a business he and his wife Joanne took over from her father. As for Pappy, he was the baddest man on the block. To put it quite simply, Pappy Mason was a legend in his own time. In the mid-80s, the crack vial spawned violence and bloodshed, paper chasers and four-corner hustlers, drug empires and kingpin galore. And in the annals of mythical drug lore, Pappy Mason has stood tall over time as the man, the myth and the folk hero that inspired Jay-Z, Nas and 50 Cent to lionize him and his exploits in verse. There was legends, myths like urban legends myths, Irv Gotti said of the Southeast Queens hustlers. And for real, can't nobody front on that. But let's go way back, before Pappy was the certified street legend that he is. There's not a lot of history on this guy, a Queens hustler from the era. They say Pappy was from Brooklyn somewhere. Apparently he was from Crown Heights, not Queens. But that didn't stop Pappy from becoming a Queens legend. It's said he was born in Alabama and moved to Crown Heights at a young age. At the time, Brooklyn had the thug stuff on lock. Of the 5 boroughs, Brooklyn was known for producing the thoroughest, most grimiest dudes. Pappy, who was a natural-born fighter, came up in this thug culture and learned how to be a man on Brooklyn's tough streets. First as a member of the gang, the Jolly Stompers, and later as a stick-up kid. Back in the day, Pappy was not known as a drug player, but he was known as a hothead who took no shorts and who hated the police. At a young age, he was telling the police in his neighborhood to suck my DCK. He held a big middle finger up to authority. It was just how he was cut. Pappy had a problem with authority from the jump, and his preferred way of handling that problem was with his fists. His violent ways and fights with police landed him in juvenile detention facilities like Warwick and Spofford. He did a 5-year sentence for attempted murder as a teenager and couldn't stay out of trouble. During one of his many stays at Spofford Youth House, Pappy met another young kid who was good with his fists and hailed from the 7 Crowns gang, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. The two young toughs hit it off, bonded over their ability to knock people out. They both had the "I am my brother's keeper" mentality and saw the ideals they valued in themselves and each other. Spofford was an institution for bad and troubled teens. Only the worst of the worst were sent there. Kids came in bad, but after years in that madhouse authorities called juvenile detention, they came out worse. Pappy turned his hatred for police into a hatred for correctional officers and clashed with the staff repeatedly. Pappy's the only person I know back then who had 7 years and did every day of it, Fat Cat said. He left not owing a day. And when Pappy left in 1983, he had already spent a quarter of his 23 years in prison. When you hear Cat, you hear Pap. Pappy emerged as Cat's man on the streets. Cat wanted Pap on his team because he knew Pap had that mad heart. And Pappy did his job with a vengeance. He pistol whipped a prostitute who stole from Cat in broad daylight on the block. He shot a rival dealer who tried to encroach on Cat's territory, and he shot a customer dead outside a church because the customer had the nerve to complain about the purity of Cat's product. Pappy's viciousness and image enhanced his already fearsome reputation. He had a strong mystique around him. With his Rastafarian dreadlocks and adopted Jamaican patios, dudes thought he was from Jamaica. That dude with the dreadlocks. That's Pappy. One informer told the police. He's Fat Cat's enforcer now. He the craziest guy out here. And street tales tell of Pappy sticking hot curling irons up dudes' ass to torture them or get them to talk. The man was vicious. He definitely did not play. And Pappy's work was rewarded by Fat Cat. He handed Pappy a lucrative drug spot in 40 projects to play his trade and get money. Pappy took the spot and ran with it. The enforcer for Cat's crew formed his own crew. Pappy's sub-organization was called the Bibos. The Bibos grew dreads too and sold cocaine and heroin. The Bibos were underneath Pap. He was the head man in charge among Bibo people from 40 projects, and along with the dreadlocks, Pappy's crew emulated him in all matters, from his violent ways to his speech patterns. They used to try and be like Pap, talking Jamaican. A lot of dudes were under Pap. He had a strong influence in the hood. The Bibos adopted Rastafarian culture as their own. They got a thing more they call one love, and when Pappy says you do, you do. One love means do or die. We are all tight, we family. When Pappy gives you an order, you do. Pappy was down on 150th Street, but his crew held it down in 40. The Bibos were out there. They had leather jackets with Bibo on them. When you think of Pappy, you think of an enforcer for Cat. Pappy was a wild man in the streets. He didn't care if he was blatant when it came to violence. He had his own identity as far as getting busy. He was a loyal, faithful soldier. In the hood, it was all Cat and Pap. And when crack hit, it changed Queens dramatically. The violence erupted and Pappy was at the center of it. He was a wild man. And Pappy Mason didn't play. When Fat Cat was arrested in 1985, Pappy crept on the arresting officer as he escorted Fat Cat to a police car. Pappy slipped behind the cop and was prepared to shoot the cop to free Cat so they could make a getaway, but Cat shook his head no. So Pappy crept back into the cut, gun still in hand. Pap used to visit Cat in jail at the Queen's House of Detention and even threatened Fat Cat's girl after his arrest. I don't know what you know, Pap told her, but Cat says you better forget it. And when Cat's parole officer was killed for violating Cat's state parole, Pappy was the main suspect. On February 28, 1985, Queens's detectives arrested Pappy for the murder on Cat crew member Perry Bellamy's statement. Bellamy told the cops that he lured the police to the ambush spot where Pappy gunned him down. When the cops arrested Pappy, he had a loaded .22 caliber Derringer in his boot that he was trying to get it before the officers arrested him, adding to his charges. Asked to cooperate into the affair and implicate Fat Cat for the murder of the police officer, Pappy told police, "I ain't no Perry Bellamy," referring to the snitch in Fat Cat's camp. Because of his refusal to break the street code, Pappy joined his boss in the Queen's House of Detention. And during Pappy's incarceration, his legend grew. As for Cat's, on July 29, 1985, he was back in police custody after a raid on Big Mac's Deli. The police caught him with 2 guns. The search also netted $180,000 in cash and varying amounts of heroin, cocaine and marijuana. Charged with gun and drug possession, Nichols was able to get out on bail. He was soon arrested again by his parole officer, Brian Rooney, for violating his parole. Angry to be back in jail, Nichols ordered a few of his associates to rough up Rooney. Rooney was shot to death on October 10th. He was indicted on charges of second-degree murder for the killing of Rooney in July 1987. At a later trial, Nichols insisted that he never intended for Rooney to be killed. From behind bars, Katz continued running his drug operation and dealing harshly with those who went against him. He later admitted to ordering the murders of 2 people. In 1986, Isaac Bolden was shot and killed by Katz associates after he and a few others robbed Katz's then-girlfriend, Carolyn Tyson. Katz's former girlfriend, Myrtle Maisha Horsham, also met a grisly fate after she took money from his drug operation. It didn't even matter that she and Katz had a child together, a son named DC. In December 1987, Horsham and a friend were shot several times by members of Katz's crew. The friend lived, but Horsham died of her injuries. DC was with Horsham at the time of the shooting, and was later dropped off in his maternal grandmother's yard. Katz later stated that he had Horsham killed because she was my girl and she took my money and spent it on another person. Katz soon found his own family under siege. His wife was kidnapped in May 1987 and held for ransom. After paying off the kidnappers, she was released. The kidnappers were later apprehended. Other members of his family were not so fortunate. In May 1988, the home of Louise Coleman, Katz's mother, was firebombed. His mother and stepfather escaped unharmed, but his invalid half-sister Mary died in the fire. By that time, however, Nichols had been convicted of several counts of drug-related and weapons-related crimes. He had been convicted in January 1988 and later sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. But this was only a part of his legal woes. The cold-blooded murder of police officer Edward Byrne in February 1988 by his associate Mason created a public outcry, and the authorities turned up the heat on Nichols's operation. It's said that while he was incarcerated, Pappy gave Philip Marshall Copeland a gold and diamond ring shaped like Africa worth $40,000 off his finger in a visit at Rikers to take care of future Bibo ventures. Pappy would call his crew in the streets from Rikers and go on tirades about the cops, and word on the streets concerning the police killing was that the Bibos did it. But Pappy maintained that he didn't kill a cop, and before trials started in January 1986, one Queens native said, "There's not a single soul who is gonna come in and testify against that boy." In the borough, that was the prevailing sentiment. Pappy had that much power on the street, and his cold-blooded antics put fear into people's hearts. His influence was so strong. He had a big influence. The prosecutor and judge in the case were living under constant anonymous death threats during the weeks prior to the trial, and right before the case started, the star witness Perry Bellamy refused to testify. Pappy had got his man. Only Bellamy's taped confession was played for the jury. "They were all there when the police got killed," Perry Bellamy's voice said on the tape player. "Pappy, he just opened fire. Pappy got him." That SHT was swift. But without a live witness willing to testify, the jury hung. As Pappy made bail in February 1988 after the hung jury, He formed an imaginary gun with his thumb and index finger, turned to the prosecutor, and pulled the trigger. Pappy Mason was free again. But this time he would only be on the street for 10 days. But during that 10 days he set in course the motions that would shock the nation. Pappy was on bail and drinking a beer on a South Jamaica street corner when a beat cop accosted him. "Do me a favor," a cop called the Iceman told Pappy. "Don't drink beer in front of me." Pappy was stunned. No cop ever told him what to do. "Do you know who I am?" he demanded of the cop. "Yeah, the guy who is going to put his beer in a paper bag." The cop replied. "Fuck you." Pappy screamed and a shoving match ensued. After a couple of seconds Pap walked off, his beer on the ground spilling on the pavement. Pappy was in a rage. "That cop has to die," Pap said. "He dissed me." Death threats against the cop followed and he was pulled from the streets for his protection. Pappy's gun case, for the derringer he was arrested with, was remanded a week later and Pappy was back at Rikers. He had only lasted 10 days on the street since the Rooney murder. He was out before they remanded him, one local said. He was organizing at that time. It was already planned. Pappy Mason was about to set in motion a jarring set of events that would have repercussions for the decades to come. "We lose one, they lose one," Pappy allegedly told Marshall. Pappy wanted the Bibos to send the police a message. He wanted to send a message out. The message was that even though he was behind bars he still gave orders. The message was devastating. Pappy wanted a cop hit. He was eventually convicted on the gun charge, but that was the least of his worries. When Pap went to jail after Cat, most of Cat's strength in the streets was gone, and Pappy knew this. He needed to do something drastic to keep his power in the hood in check. Something unheard of. His message was carefully constructed to have a maximum effect. Early in the morning of February 28, 1988, NYPD officer Edward Byrne, a 22-year-old rookie, was shot 5 times in the head while sitting in his patrol car in Queens 103rd Precinct protecting a witness whose house had been firebombed after he testified against some local drug dealers. The rookie's murder was front-page news all over the nation and kicked the war on drugs into high gear and led to the creation of New York's Tactical Narcotics Task Force, TNT. Informants said some Jamaicans from Brooklyn killed the cop. Pappy went to prison a day before the officer was killed. Four suspects, all Bibos, were immediately arrested: Todd Scott, Scott Cobb, David McClary and Philip Copeland. 3 of the 4 suspects made videotaped statements off the jump implicating themselves, Fat Cat and Pappy. The only one who didn't talk was Philip Copeland. The police played it up to implicate the drug lord Fat Cat in the media. This was an order, not for the murder of a particular officer, but any officer for the purpose of delivering a message of death to anyone who opposed Fat Cat, Lieutenant Philip Ponzarella of the Queens Homicide Squad said. But behind the scenes a different tale was emerging. Cat was mad about what Pappy did. He thought that what Bibo did was messed up. Now nobody will make no money. Pappy explained his reasons: "The man dissed me. It was because the police officer ordered Pappy to put a can of beer in a brown paper bag. But as Cat found out, Pappy had the wrong cop killed." The execution-style murder was said to have been ordered by Pappy from prison for revenge against the police. And to make matters worse, on August 12, 1988, the feds indicted Fat Cat and his whole crew on racketeering charges. The New York Daily News headline read: "Fat Cat's empire crumbles, feds bust drug clan, $20 million in dope seized, 30 suspects nabbed in massive raid." The suspects included Pap and Cat's mothers. While all this was going down, Pappy was sentenced for the gun, receiving a 3.5 to 7-year sentence. At sentencing he told the judge, "You gotta do what you gotta do. I look crazy, so people are going to judge me on that. This is 2 cops I supposedly killed. Cops come to me at the precinct and say I'm the leader of a drug ring. I've never been arrested for drugs in my life. I don't know what they're talking about. The federal racketeering and conspiracy case included charges that Pappy and Fat Cat orchestrated and gave the order to kill the cop. The 4 suspects in the state case, the triggerman and his 3 cohorts, had already been convicted and sentenced to 25 to life. Now the feds were going after the ringleaders. Todd Scott is the one who said that Pappy ordered the hit. But he wasn't the only one who betrayed his men. It's alleged that on September 29, 1989, in a secret court session, Fat Cat agreed to testify against Pappy Mason. The feds offered me and Pap 40 years under the old law to cop out to 848 for our mother's freedom, Cat explained. Pap said he wasn't going to plead guilty. I took the plea. There was a lot of outrage in the streets at the time concerning Fat Cat's alleged duplicity. And there was outrage at the prosecutor's office too, where one prosecutor said, using Fat Cat to get Pappy is like using syphilis to get gonorrhea. But to this day Pappy maintains that Cat never testified. His name was not in any of my paperwork. Pappy Mason went to trial alone in the federal racketeering case. I'm not letting these crackers roll me, he said. And about his mother facing the indictment he explained, my mother knows about white people. She said God will make a way. Harry Butchelder, Pappy's lawyer, tried to enter an insanity defense at the November 1989 trial. But it didn't play. Pappy was violent in court and the judge isolated him. So in effect he boycotted his own trial, preferring to follow the proceedings on a specially installed speaker system in his cell. They did me wrong, Pappy said. Jaw is good, it was no trial. It was a KKK meeting for real. That was not an indictment of the government. Scott Cobb was a witness saying he knew in advance of Mason's plan to kill a cop. The order was given to Marshall, who was instructed to pay $8,000 a head. Mike Bones, from Cat's crew, also testified, and Viola Nichols, Cat's sister, spent 3 days on the stand. Fat Cat was never called. They say that me and Pappy planned this, Philip Marshall Copeland said. But me and him never talked, and I didn't go see him, so I can say that he didn't play no part in it. David McClary, the accused shooter, denied Pappy ever gave him an order. And even Pappy claimed innocence. No, hell no, why would I kill a cop? Still, Pappy was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment after the jury deliberated 3 days before finding him guilty. I look at it like this: they used me and my boy to make points during that election year, Marshall said, summing it all up from his point of view. But whatever the truth is, the legend lives on. I am a man amongst men. I am God's son, Pappy Mason said. I am strong. I will never give up on Bibo. I'm the hip-hop kid from Southside Queens. And a lot of the kids who grew up on hip-hop and later became rap stars looked up to Pappy. He's had a strong presence indirectly in their lives, and this has translated to their songs. Nas on God's Sons Get Down saying, New York streets where killers walk like Pistol Pete and Pappy Mason, gave the young boys admiration. Nas also name-dropped Pap in The World Is Yours, Face in Time like Pappy Mason, he rapped. And Southside Queens' most controversial rapper 50 Cent used Pap's name in verse 2 in the Ghetto Quran, where he alluded to Fat Cat snitching on Pappy. I used to idolize Cat, hurt me in my heart to hear that he snitched on Pap, how he go out like that. And 50 also big upped the Bibos in his song, Go against crews like Bibo and killers like Pap Mason. Other rappers like Ja Rule, Fat Joe and Ghostface have also saluted Pappy in verse. Pappy has gone down in infamy as one of the most notorious killers to ever walk the streets of New York. And even to this day the fearless soldier Pappy Mason, who some say is as strong as an ox, is ready to go to war. Tales from the pen have circulated of Pappy battling the goon squads and cell extraction teams. They say he wraps his head with towels to soften the blows from guards' batons and saturates his body with baby oil to wrestle with the guards so they can't grab a hold of him when they storm his cell, 6 deep, to try and subdue one man. They say he wages a constant battle against the guards, throwing shit and piss at them through the little door trap where they put the food tray through. Because you know Pappy Mason is in a 24-hour lockdown. He long ago forfeited his right to be on a regular compound. Pappy Mason's burnt out. I was with him at MCC in '92. He had dreads down to the floor, slept underneath the bed, smoked a carton of cigs a day, said one federal prisoner. They lie on Fat Cat and me. Word to mother, Pappy said. Pappy calls Cat his brother. But street legend discredits Pappy due to him being shot up with Thorazine. Some dudes say he doesn't know what he's saying, but whatever the truth, it's caused a lot of controversy. Not enough to diminish Pappy's infamy though. Even though he's been locked away from the world for the last 20+ years, his legend lives on. As does his link with Fat Cat. They will forever be linked together. But unlike Cat, Pappy will forever be recognized as a stand-up dude, whereas Fat Cat's credentials, right or wrong, are in question. A chilling fact rises to the surface though in this story, and that is no matter who ordered it, the bullets that killed Edward Byrne were meant for the other cop, the one called Iceman. That wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, and may God bless you all. Hosanna in excelsis.